Breaking news, a grand jury has declined to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James.
My experience as both a prosecutor when I was that in the Justice Department and as a defense attorney, I can't tell you a time in the federal system, not the state system, where a federal prosecutor thought a case was strong enough to bring to a grand jury, and the grand jury has said no.
Oh, that's gonna hurt!
Donald Trump's week/weekend just keeps getting worse, especially considering a mounting cascade of legal losses is racking up. A pattern of courts rejecting Donald Trump's boldest moves. After a federal grand jury refused to re-indict Letitia James, which is a very rare rebuke after full prosecutorial presentation, experts then weighed in and highlighted how unprecedented and ultimately humiliating it is for an administration to seek such a high-profile win in the court and fail.
Pretty big embarrassment for the Justice Department and President Trump's relentless pursuit of revenge by using the powers of his office to go after his political enemies. A federal grand jury in Virginia was asked today to re-indict the New York Attorney General Letitia James, and the grand jury said no. A grand jury refusing to indict someone, which is a much lower bar than a trial, is pretty rare. But this is now the second time the Justice Department has tried to prosecute James for alleged mortgage fraud and not had it work out. You'll remember a judge threw out the first case because of the improper appointment of the president's handpicked prosecutor, Lindsay Halligan, as the interim U.S. attorney handling that case. A different prosecutor from a different office was brought in for today's attempted do-over. There's been no reaction yet from President Trump, who has made his disdain for Tish James quite clear since she took him and his company to court over business fraud and won.
The grand jury case against Letitia James, revived after a prior dismissal, was presented anew, but then jurors said, nah. The lawyer defending James called it unprecedented in his decades of legal work. He's never seen a case that looked solid enough to charge and still be rejected, which to many signaled more than just a failed indictment for this administration, but more so a public rejection by citizens, not just a judge, but a jury, of what had been pitched as an enforceable criminal case.
Breaking news, a grand jury has declined to indict New York Attorney General Letitia James. Let's get straight to CNN's Caitlin Polans. Caitlin, what are you learning?
Well, Caitlin Collins and I have just confirmed through some sources that indeed a grand jury sitting in the federal courthouse in Norfolk, Virginia today, they looked at the possibility of indicting Letitia James for mortgage fraud, and they said no to this Justice Department. Now, this comes just about 10 days or a week or so after a judge previously dismissed the case. That case was dismissed against James. It was the same mortgage fraud case, we believe, that the prosecutors were trying to get off the ground again today. It had been dismissed because previously a judge looked at it and said that the prosecutor who had taken it through the grand jury the first time wasn't validly doing that job, and so that they needed to try again with a grand jury to reconfirm an indictment if they wanted it. We do, though, believe that the Justice Department could try again before a grand jury, potentially a third time, to try and secure a James indictment. But we do not know exactly when that might happen. We were told that this could be not a time for premature celebration.
And the thing is, this is far from isolated, right? In fact, according to recent reporting in Reuters, more than 60 federal judges or appeal courts have acted to slow or block various administration policies. I mean, that's a scale of judicial pushback, which is rarely seen in a presidency, not to mention just the first year. But then again, most presidents aren't seeking retribution to the effect of which Donald Trump is. But it's indicative of the chaos that is going on with this administration. I mean, even inside the Department of Justice, tasked with defending Trump-era policies in court, that's crumbling. Also, 2/3 of its staff have quit, citing demoralization, legal and ethical concerns about defending what many see as legally shaky or politically motivated actions.
Given how low the bar typically is to secure an indictment, doesn't mean guilt, but it's not usually that difficult. That's why there's the phrase, you can indict a ham sandwich. What did your client have to say when she found out that they declined to re-indict her?
So the Attorney General has a statement of her own, and I hope people will read it. She has been fearless, and she has been courageous, and she has been steadfast in making sure people know that what's happening to her is because she's carried out her job as being an elected official that was sworn to uphold the law, which is all that she has done. So what her reaction is today, she's incredibly grateful that the system, even though it can bend, and sometimes this administration will want to break it, has stood strong this day.
The more times they try to indict her, do you think that helps the argument about a selective prosecution that y'all have been trying to make?
I think you mean vindictive prosecution, and the answer is very much so. I mean, this concept of the law, which is very hard to prove, basically with all they've done, I think we filed a motion that probably had 7 single-space pages of statements President Trump has made to go after her, and then the unprecedented nature of bringing such a case with no basis, given that career prosecutors have said there's no case. And now if they re-indict or if they try to up it again and they keep trying it again, all they're doing is making our motion stronger and stronger.
And Bill Pulte, the official that you mentioned, he's the head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. He has made clear that he's used, the power of his job in order to seek out information like this. What do you think this spells for him if they have failed to seek a second indictment?
Well, I think there's 2 parts of that, Caitlin. The first is he has already been exposed in articles from his own people in the Inspector General's office and other people inside the agency who have come forward and saying he's violated rules to do what he's doing. That is, I understand, under some review itself. As to whether or not this teaches him that not everything he does turns in the way he wants. Remember, A.G. James was the first person he did this to, and then came Senator Adam Schiff, and then came Federal Reserve Board Governor Lisa Cook, and then recently Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. Maybe it'll get the message that this is not the way that you're supposed to do your job.
Were you surprised that they couldn't get her indicted today?
I have to be surprised. I've practiced law for a long time. And in my experience as both a prosecutor when I was that in the Justice Department and as a defense attorney, I can't tell you a time in the federal system, not the state system, where a federal prosecutor thought a case was strong enough to bring to a grand jury and the grand jury has said no.
So you haven't seen anything like this before?
I have not.
Coming from Abby Lowell, that says a lot.
But the message this sends, right, when the courts, not political opponents, but courts repeatedly throw out or block your agenda, it isn't just, well, you lost a case. The message becomes you continue to overreach, you push too far, and you ignored constitutional boundaries, which this administration seems hell-bent on doing time and time again. See, for instance, their recent military boat scandal for another example of gross overreach to the point of much needed scrutiny.
So shouldn't that matter too?
Well, the Admiral said that Suriname boats do come to the United States with drugs as well. They don't know. They said they could. So we don't know where that particular vessel was going.
But that undermines.
No.
That undermines the
admin's
entire argument.
But we know that the terrorist organization that had the boat, that had the drugs on it that was hit, is a designated terrorist group.
One of the administration's primary arguments was that these boats were an imminent threat to the United States.
They are. They're killing 5,000 Americans a month.
They're not headed to the United States.
The drugs are killing 5,000 Americans a month.
Also, I want to pose this question. So the Coast Guard said earlier that 212 ships were intercepted with no deaths. That means we do have the ability to do this. 25% of those ships had no drugs. Are you okay with striking boats with no drugs?
Listen, the Coast Guard is patrolling off the coast of the United States.
Are you okay with a 25% chance?
Wait. That's not a 25% chance off the coast of Venezuela. They know for certain that these drugs are on these ships.
We have intercepted over 200 boats with no violence whatsoever. We have the ability to do this. We are committing violence because of
losing 60,000 Americans a year.
And that's awful. And that's awful.
Of course.
But here's
We're not
the thing.
intercepting these boats enough, obviously.
But they're not even coming to our country.
Says who?
The Admiral.
No, He said it was going to a boat off the coast that they never found. But they're not saying that on all these ships out there.
So can we justify striking a boat that's going to any country because eventually they may become a secondary country where drugs go in the United States? What's the barrier here? How do you justify this?
The justification is that they're a terrorist organization and they've been designated as such. And we can take them out just like Obama did with hundreds of strikes all around the world.
Just because Obama did it doesn't make it right either.
Well, but the Democrats back then didn't see it
there was an authorized use of military force for Obama. He actually had one. You can argue.
And for anyone watching who values the rule of law, who, I don't know, expects the government to act within the bounds of the Constitution and due process, this may have went in the favor of democracy in this example, but it will definitely not deter the president from continuing down this path.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to add the MeidasTouch podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts for new updates every single day.